Chapter 1, The Day They Laughed. The Galactic Council Citadel floated above Vera Prime like a second moon, its silver ring stretching thousands of kilometers through space. To most of the galaxy, it symbolized stability. Laws were written there. Alliances were forged there. Wars were prevented there. At least, that was the myth. Ambassador Elias Ward stood in a transport lift rising toward the central chamber. Through the transparent walls, he watched streams of ships arriving from every corner of known space. Ancient civilizations sent representatives aboard vessels older than some planets' governments. Humanity's delegation arrived in something far less impressive, a practical diplomatic cruiser built for efficiency rather than spectacle. A familiar reminder. Humans had joined the galactic community 70 years ago. Long enough to earn membership. Not long enough to earn respect. The lift doors opened. Ward stepped into the largest chamber he had ever seen, though he had visited it dozens of times. Thousands of seats climbed upward in concentric circles. Massive holographic displays hovered overhead. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the hall, speaking in countless languages translated instantly through neural networks. At the center stood the speaking platform. Today, it belonged to him. Ward crossed the floor carrying a data slate containing months of intelligence gathered from human frontier colonies. As he approached the platform, he noticed several delegates exchanging amused looks. They already expected another warning from Earth. That suited him fine. The lights dimmed. High Chancellor Vorik Threx appeared on the central display. The towering alien's gray features carried the calm confidence of a leader who had spent decades in power. Ambassador Ward, Threx said. You requested emergency session status. Proceed. Ward activated the holograms. Star maps filled the chamber. Red markers flashed along the galaxy's outer regions. A murmur spread among the delegates. Over the past 18 months, Ward began, human reconnaissance networks have recorded unusual Dravari military activity across 43 systems. The display zoomed inward. Fleet formations appeared. Supply routes emerged. Shipyard expansions glowed across multiple sectors. Ward continued. These are not routine deployments. The Dravari Dominion is preparing for large-scale offensive operations. A reptilian delegate raised a claw. Against whom? We don't know yet, Ward replied. But the buildup is accelerating. Another map appeared. Several frontier colonies blinked yellow. 3 independent settlements have ceased communications. Trade vessels have disappeared. Patrol groups have failed to report. Silence settled briefly. Then someone laughed. Ward ignored it. The evidence indicates preparation for war. I recommend immediate defensive measures. He displayed a list. Joint fleet exercises. Border reinforcements. Emergency readiness protocols. Rapid response deployments. Reasonable precautions. Nothing more. When he finished, the chamber remained quiet for several seconds. Then Chancellor Threx leaned forward. Ambassador Ward, are we to mobilize the galaxy because of speculation? Ward kept his voice steady. This isn't speculation. A different delegate spoke. The Dravari posture aggressively every decade. Another joined in. They have done so for centuries. A third added, and every time someone predicts invasion. Laughter rippled through nearby sections. Ward tapped the display. New images appeared. Weapons factories. Massive fuel reserves. Construction yards operating around the clock. Posturing doesn't require this scale. The laughter faded slightly. Threx folded his hands. Your species has experienced many conflicts in its short history. Perhaps that influences your interpretation. Ward understood the implication. Humans saw threats everywhere. The old powers considered themselves wiser. Fear has always been a human specialty, one delegate remarked. Several others chuckled. Ward met the speaker's gaze. No, he said. Survival is. For a moment, nobody responded. Then Chancellor Threx smiled faintly. The Council appreciates Earth's concern. However, no action will be taken. A few delegates nodded. Others returned to private conversations before the session had even officially ended. The vote lasted less than 3 minutes. Ward's proposal failed overwhelmingly. The meeting dissolved soon afterward. As representatives filed from the chamber, many barely acknowledged him. Some offered polite smiles. Others looked openly amused. The warning had become entertainment. Hours later, Ward sat alone aboard the diplomatic cruiser departing Vera Prime. Stars stretched into brilliant lines as the vessel entered hyperspace. He stared at the mission report displayed before him. Rejected. Again. A soft chime sounded. His communications officer appeared on screen. Ambassador? Yes. We've received confirmation from Earth. Ward already knew what it would say. Send it through. The message appeared instantly. Authorized, Phase 1 preparations. His expression hardened. Earth had listened. That would have to be enough. Across human space, shipyards quietly expanded production schedules. Reserve officers received sealed activation notices. Supply depots increased inventory levels without public explanation. No announcements were made. No speeches delivered. Humanity simply prepared. Far beyond the frontier, hidden within Dravari territory, enormous warships emerged from orbital construction platforms. Thousands gathered information. Then tens of thousands. Command vessels transmitted encrypted orders across light years. The final stage had begun. A massive flagship turned toward the stars. Moments later, entire fleets vanished into hyperspace. Their destination remained unknown. For now. The galaxy slept peacefully, confident in its own strength. Only a handful of humans understood that war was already on its way. Chapter 2, The Fire Spreads. The First World fell without warning. At 3:17 Galactic Standard Time, all communications from the frontier colony of Nerith Prime ceased. One moment its orbital stations were transmitting routine traffic reports. The next, silence. At first, officials blamed a network failure. Then rescue ships arrived. What they found sent shockwaves through every government in known space. Nerith Prime was burning. Cities lay in ruins. Defense platforms drifted as twisted wreckage. Millions were dead. The survivors spoke of enormous warships appearing from hyperspace and striking with terrifying precision. The attackers left no message. They didn't need to. The insignia on the shattered hulls told the story. The Dravari Dominion had begun its war. Within days, 3 more systems vanished from the galactic map. Trade routes collapsed. Merchant convoys disappeared. Refugee vessels flooded neighboring sectors carrying frightened civilians and stories that grew worse with every retelling. The Galaxy Council could no longer ignore reality. An emergency session was called. This time the chamber was packed. No one laughed when Ambassador Elias Ward entered. Large holographic displays filled the room with live battlefield updates. Red warning markers multiplied by the hour. High Chancellor Vorik Threx looked noticeably older than he had only weeks earlier. The situation is evolving, he declared. Ward almost responded but stopped himself. Evolving? Entire planets were under attack. A military representative stood. We require additional intelligence before committing major assets. Murmurs of agreement followed. Ward stared in disbelief. Another delegate spoke. We must determine whether these strikes represent isolated operations or a broader campaign. Before Ward could answer, a new transmission interrupted the session. A terrified alien officer appeared on the central display. His bridge shook violently. Council command, we're under heavy assault. Explosions flashed behind him. We need immediate reinforcement. The signal distorted. Then vanished. The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what had happened. Still, arguments continued. Committees formed. Reports were requested. Votes were scheduled. While politicians debated procedure, worlds died. Far from the council chamber, Earth moved differently. Inside the United Earth Defense Headquarters, giant tactical displays tracked every Dravari advance. Fleet Admiral Sofia Reyes studied the incoming reports. They're moving faster than predicted. An intelligence officer nodded. 27 confirmed attacks in 12 days. Reyes looked toward a star map. How long until they reach core territory? At current speed? Months. Then we don't have months to waste. Across human space, preparations accelerated. Shipyards that had quietly expanded after Ward's warning now operated continuously. New vessels launched every day. Reserve formations reported for duty. Supply convoys traveled between colonies under military escort. Human citizens began noticing changes. Recruitment centers filled with volunteers. Factories increased production. News broadcasts discussed growing instability beyond the frontier. Nobody panicked. Humanity had seen dark times before. Meanwhile, the Council's response remained fragmented. Several powerful member species finally deployed fleets toward contested regions. Their commanders expected quick victories. They had spent centuries believing no rival could challenge them. The Dravari corrected that assumption. The first major engagement occurred in the Tarsus corridor. Thousands watched through live tactical feeds. The Council fleet entered the system in perfect formation. Elegant. Disciplined. Predictable. The Dravari commander exploited that immediately. Instead of meeting the fleet head-on, enemy squadrons struck supply ships and communication relays. Command networks collapsed. Orders arrived late or not at all. Within hours, confusion spread across the battlefield. The result was catastrophic. More than half the defending force was destroyed. The survivors retreated. For the first time in generations, a major council navy had suffered a decisive defeat. News of the disaster raced across the galaxy. Financial markets crashed. Civilian transports jammed evacuation routes. Governments declared states of emergency. Fear replaced confidence. Back on Vera Prime, Elias Ward watched the aftermath from a private observation room overlooking the city. The lights of the capital stretched beneath him like rivers of gold. A soft tone signaled an incoming message. Fleet Admiral Reyes appeared. The Tarsus fleet is gone. Ward nodded. I saw. The Council still hasn't unified its command structure. Politics. Politics won't stop invasion fleets. Ward looked toward the stars. No. It won't. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally Reyes broke the silence. How long before they ask for help? Ward considered the question. Weeks earlier, Council delegates had mocked human concerns. Now entire sectors were collapsing. Pride lasts longer than common sense, he said. But eventually reality wins. As if responding to his words, another alert flashed across the room. A priority transmission from Council intelligence. Ward opened it. His expression hardened instantly. Reyes noticed. What happened? The Dravari just announced their next objective. The Admiral leaned closer. Which system? Ward looked directly at her. Vera Prime. For the first time, the political heart of the galaxy stood directly in the path of the storm. And the enemy was already moving. Chapter 3, When Humanity Stood Up. Panic spread faster than any fleet. The announcement that Vera Prime had become the Dravari's next target sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News channels ran non-stop coverage. Evacuation requests overwhelmed transport authorities. Markets collapsed further as confidence in the council evaporated. For centuries, the capital had been considered untouchable. Now that illusion was gone. Inside the council citadel, emergency meetings continued around the clock. Delegates who once dismissed warnings now searched desperately for solutions. Most found themselves looking toward one man. Elias Ward. The requests began arriving almost immediately. Private messages. Official petitions. Personal appeals. Species that had mocked humanity now sought Earth's assistance. Ward read each one in silence. A month earlier, many of those same leaders had laughed while he stood before them. Now their worlds burned. A chime interrupted his thoughts. Another message. This time it came directly from Chancellor Vorik Threx. Ward opened the transmission. The aging leader appeared exhausted. Ambassador, Threx said quietly, we require assistance. No titles. No superiority. No condescension. Just a simple request. Ward studied him for several seconds. The council had opportunities to act. I know. The warnings were clear. I know that too. For the first time since they had met, Threx sounded human. Not powerful. Not confident. Merely tired. Billions are depending on us, the Chancellor continued. Whatever mistakes were made, they cannot be undone. Ward ended the call without offering an answer. The decision belonged to Earth. Hours later, representatives from across human space gathered through secure communication networks. Political leaders, military commanders, scientists, industrial directors, and colonial governors filled the virtual conference chamber. The debate began immediately. We owe them nothing, one governor argued. They abandoned frontier worlds. They ignored every warning. Several voices agreed. Others disagreed just as strongly. If Vera Prime falls, the war won't stop there. This affects everyone. We can't let entire civilizations collapse. The discussion continued for hours. Eventually attention shifted toward Fleet Admiral Sofia Reyes. What is your military assessment? Someone asked. Reyes answered without hesitation. If we remain neutral, the Dravari will eventually reach human territory. Silence followed. We can fight now beside allies, she continued, or later by ourselves. The logic was difficult to challenge. Yet the final argument came from Elias Ward. When he stood, the room became quiet. He looked around at the assembled faces. I understand the anger. Nobody interrupted. I felt it myself. Images appeared behind him. Destroyed colonies. Refugee convoys. Families fleeing war zones. Children standing beside shattered homes. They were wrong about us, Ward said. Many underestimated humanity. The images changed. Humanitarian rescue missions. Medical ships. Emergency shelters. Generations of people helping one another through disaster. Our history isn't defined by those who doubted us. He paused. It's defined by what we do when others need us. The room remained still. Ward took a slow breath. When someone is drowning, you don't ask whether they once insulted you. You decide whether you're the kind of person who reaches out a hand. No further debate followed. The vote was held minutes later. Humanity would intervene. Across dozens of systems, sealed orders were opened simultaneously. Fleet commanders received activation codes. Defense industries shifted to maximum production. The largest deployment in human history began. Thousands of ships emerged from hidden anchorages. Carrier groups departed fortified stations. Supply convoys moved behind advancing formations. Within days, human fleets entered contested territory. The Dravari expected frightened refugees. Instead, they found resistance. The first major engagement occurred near the occupied world of Keeler. Enemy commanders deployed according to familiar doctrine. Concentrated firepower. Rigid formations. Centralized control. Human forces fought differently. Independent squadrons struck from multiple directions. Electronic warfare disrupted communications. Fast attack groups targeted logistics vessels rather than battleships. The battlefield changed rapidly. Dravari officers struggled to adapt. Their orders arrived too slowly. Human commanders adjusted in real time. By the end of the engagement, 3 enemy task forces had been destroyed. The occupation fleet withdrew. Keeler was liberated. Celebrations erupted across the planet. For many civilians, human warships were the first friendly vessels they had seen in months. Similar victories followed. System by system, the advance slowed. Human rescue operations gained almost as much attention as their military successes. Evacuation ships carried civilians regardless of species. Medical teams treated anyone who needed help. Old prejudices began cracking. People noticed. They remembered who had arrived when everything seemed lost. Weeks later, Elias Ward returned to the council chamber. This time the atmosphere felt different. Delegates rose when he entered. Not out of protocol. Out of respect. Before the session could begin, an urgent alert flashed across every display. A new intelligence report. The room grew silent as data streamed across the holograms. Fleet sizes. Production estimates. Deployment schedules. Then the final number appeared. Even seasoned military leaders stared in disbelief. The Dravari had committed their last reserve armada. It dwarfed every force encountered so far. Thousands upon thousands of warships were now moving toward Vera Prime. The greatest battle of the war was coming. And for the first time, humanity would stand at the center of it. Chapter 4, The Galaxy Remembers. The final armada arrived like a moving wall of darkness. Across the tactical displays of Vera Prime, countless enemy signatures poured from hyperspace. The sheer scale of the force stunned even experienced commanders. Battleships, carriers, assault platforms, and support vessels stretched across millions of kilometers. The Dravari had committed everything. If they won here, the galaxy would break. Inside the command center orbiting Vera Prime, Fleet Admiral Sofia Reyes studied the incoming formations. Status? An officer answered immediately. All Allied fleets in position. Human forces. Ready. Reyes nodded. Then let's finish this. Throughout the defense network, ships from dozens of civilizations formed a unified battle line. Just months earlier many of those species barely trusted one another. Now they stood together beneath a single command structure largely designed by humanity. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. As enemy weapons ignited, space erupted into chaos. Brilliant streams of energy crossed the void. Missiles accelerated toward distant targets. Massive railgun rounds slammed through shields. Explosions illuminated entire sectors of the battlefield. The first wave struck the center. Exactly where the human fleets waited. Aboard the carrier Resolute, alarms echoed through every deck. Impact on Shield Grid 7. Multiple contacts approaching. Captain Aaron Mitchell remained calm. Hold formation. The ship shuddered violently. Nearby vessels vanished in bursts of light. Still the line held. The Dravari expected panic. Instead, they encountered disciplined resistance. Hours passed. Neither side gained a decisive advantage. Then a new threat emerged. An enemy breakthrough force appeared along the defensive flank, heading directly toward the orbital infrastructure protecting Vera Prime. If they succeeded, the capital would become exposed. Reyes watched the developing situation. We need someone to block that corridor. Silence followed. Everyone understood the cost. The nearest task force answered first. This is Commodore Lena Brooks. Her image appeared on screen. We'll intercept. Reyes looked at her. You won't have support. Brooks smiled faintly. Then we'll make it count. Minutes later, her ships accelerated directly into the advancing enemy formation. The battle became brutal. One by one her vessels disappeared from tactical displays. Yet every minute they delayed the breakthrough allowed Allied defenses to reposition. When the fighting ended, Brooks and her task force were gone. The corridor remained closed. Across the command network, no one celebrated. They simply continued fighting. The sacrifice had bought time. Nothing more. Meanwhile, aboard the Council Citadel, Chancellor Vorik Threx watched the battle unfold through panoramic displays. Thousands of lives vanished every second. Among them were countless humans. A deep sense of shame settled over him. Months earlier he had laughed at their warnings. Today those same people stood between civilization and annihilation. An advisor approached. Chancellor. Threx didn't look away from the screen. I was wrong. The advisor remained silent. I thought experience made us wise. His voice grew quieter. It only made us comfortable. Back in the battle, Admiral Reyes finally saw an opportunity. Intelligence analysts had discovered a weakness hidden within the Dravari deployment. Their command network relied on several heavily protected coordination vessels operating behind the main fleet. Destroy them, and the Armada would lose cohesion. Reyes acted immediately. Fast attack groups slipped through gaps created during the fighting. Electronic warfare units flooded communication channels with interference. Then the strike began. Human squadrons reached the command vessels simultaneously. The explosions were visible across the entire battlefield. Within minutes, enemy formations started drifting out of alignment. Orders conflicted. Movement stalled. For the first time, confusion spread through the Dravari ranks. Reyes seized the moment. All fleets advance. The response was immediate. Thousands of Allied ships surged forward together. The enemy line fractured. Retreat signals appeared across multiple sectors. Then the largest target of all emerged. The Dravari flagship. Its destruction would end the war. Every available weapon focused on the colossal vessel. Under relentless bombardment, its shields collapsed. Moments later, a chain reaction raced through the ship. The flagship exploded. The flash briefly outshone nearby stars. Silence followed. Then surrender transmissions began arriving. The war was over. Months later, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber looked the same. The atmosphere did not. When Elias Ward entered, every delegate rose. Not because protocol demanded it. Because respect did. At the center platform stood Chancellor Threx. The old leader faced the assembly. Then he turned toward Ward. Ambassador, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber, I owe you an apology. No one moved. No speech can undo my failures. Your warning should have been heard. Humanity should have been trusted. He lowered his head. Instead, you saved us despite our arrogance. The chamber erupted in applause. Not for a victory. For a lesson learned. Years later, reconstruction continued across countless worlds. New alliances flourished. Old prejudices faded. And on a quiet evening beneath Earth's stars, Elias Ward watched news reports showing former enemies rebuilding together. The galaxy had finally changed. Not because humanity demanded power. Because humanity chose responsibility when it mattered most. Once, the galaxy laughed when Earth asked for help. It never laughed again after humanity became the reason it survived.